What if the family who raised you turned you away, and only strangers, living by ancient ways, saw the fire inside you? In today's story, a young woman cast out by her own people stumbles into a Lakota camp and finds not just survival, but a rebirth forged in courage, spirit, and second chances. Stay with us, because the path she takes will challenge everything she thought she knew about belonging and about herself. The sound of her own breath was the only thing Evelyn could hear over the crunch of dry grass beneath her boots. She'd been walking since sunrise, and by now the prairie wind had stripped the moisture from her lips, her eyes, her voice. Dust clung to the hem of her skirt and the backs of her legs. Her feet ached with every step. Still, she didn't stop. There was no place to return to, not after what happened in Glenbrook. The preacher's voice still rang in her memory, bitter and sharp as vinegar. She is no longer one of us. And the townsfolk, those who once smiled at her in the bakery, who once asked her to mend their Sunday dresses, they had looked at her as though she carried a disease, not because of anything she had done, but because of what they thought she might become. The daughter of a woman who died in childbirth, a girl raised by her uncle who drank too much and talked too loud, a woman who wouldn't tell them where the bruises came from, so she ran, not to escape punishment, but to escape the silence. She hadn't spoken a word in 4 days. When she first saw the teepees, nestled in a low basin ringed with trees, Evelyn wasn't sure if she was dreaming. Her knees buckled slightly and she gripped the edge of a juniper branch to keep from falling. There were maybe 7 or 8 of them. Smoke rose gently from the tops. Horses grazed quietly beyond. A few children chased one another near the edge of the circle, their laughter faint but real. She was close enough to feel the warmth of the fires before someone spotted her. An older man stepped forward from the circle. His gray braids hung heavy over his chest, and his eyes were sharp but not unkind. 4 more elders, 3 men, 1 woman, rose from their seats around the central fire. None of them reached for a weapon, but none of them smiled either. Evelyn swallowed hard. Her voice cracked when she tried to speak. I'm not here to harm anyone." The man didn't answer immediately. He studied her as one might study the wind, gauging whether it would bring rain or ruin. "Then why are you here?" he asked finally. Evelyn's throat worked, but no words came. She didn't know how to explain what had happened, didn't know where to begin. "I have nowhere else to go," she managed at last. They didn't turn her away, not that night. An older woman with 2 long braids and weathered hands brought her a blanket and a bowl of soup. She didn't speak either, just placed them before her with a glance that held neither pity nor judgment. Evelyn ate by the fire with shaking hands. The others returned to their places, speaking in a language she couldn't understand. But the rhythm of it, deep, smooth, patient, felt like something ancient and steady. She slept beneath a tree that night, wrapped in the blanket the woman gave her. The stars above seemed sharper than any she'd seen in Glenbrook. The air smelled like pine smoke and sagebrush. And for the first time in days, she dreamt of something other than being chased. Morning came with the low murmur of conversation and the distant sound of drumming. Evelyn sat up, her back stiff. A girl no older than 10 stood a few yards away, holding a cup of water. "For you," the girl said in clear, accented English. Evelyn took it, whispering, "Thank you." The girl nodded. "You look like someone who got lost." "I think I did." The girl tilted her head. "We'll see what the council says. Some say outsiders shouldn't be here. Some say maybe you're meant to be." With that, she ran off, her braids bouncing behind her. Evelyn stared into the water in her hands, unsure whether to drink or pour it over her head to wake herself from whatever strange, in-between world she had wandered into. Later that day, she was summoned. The same elders sat in a circle, just as she'd seen them the night before. But now the entire camp seemed to watch. She could feel eyes on her back. She was invited, not ordered, to sit in the center. Her palms sweated. Her heart thudded in her chest like a drum too fast for the rhythm. The old man with gray braids was the first to speak. "You say you come with no harm, but all who come carry something. What do you carry, woman from the East?" Evelyn met his eyes. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "I carry shame," she said finally, "but it's not mine. It was given to me by people who only knew half the story." He nodded as if that answer wasn't unexpected. And what would you take from us? I don't want to take anything, she said. Only to learn. And, if I'm allowed, to stay. The elders were silent for a long moment. Then the woman who had given her the blanket spoke, her voice like the rustle of wind through cottonwood. Then stay you shall, but the fire will test you, and the earth will name you. Until then, you are no one. Evelyn bowed her head. I'm ready. Whether that was true or not, only the fire could say. They gave her no name. Not yet. Among the Lakota, names were earned, spoken by the land, whispered through action, carved into spirit by wind and endurance. Until then, she was simply the girl who came from the east. They let her stay, but no one called her friend. No one called her enemy either. She was something in between. Evelyn, though she no longer used that name, rose each day with the sun, not because she wanted to, but because the old woman, Tahla, knocked on the post outside her tent flap with a stick and muttered, "Day waits for no ghost." Tahla was the one who took her in, and the one who made her work harder than anyone else. She learned to gather wood, how to spot dry bark, how to bundle it without breaking her back. She learned to scrape hides with a sharpened antler until her arms trembled. She learned to keep the fire alive, even when the wind threatened to steal it. Good flame is like good spirit, Tahla told her. Hard to build, easy to lose. The others watched, especially the young men. Some sneered, some whispered. One of them, a tall boy with scar paint still on his cheekbones, passed her each morning without a word, his gaze a knife and a question all at once. She didn't flinch. Let them stare. Let them wonder. She had been stared at before, back in Glenbrook, with whispers that curled like smoke. She's trouble. She's ruined. Only here, in this camp, those stares didn't define her. They tested her, which was better. Harder, but better. One evening, after days of chopping and hauling, her fingers blistered and shoulders raw, Evelyn stood by the central fire as the sun dipped below the cottonwoods. A group of women sat nearby, weaving with calm efficiency. Evelyn stepped forward, hesitant. "Can I watch?" They glanced up. One of them, maybe her own age, held her gaze. "Only if you do," the girl said. "Watching won't keep you warm in winter." They made space. Evelyn sat, legs folded beneath her, mimicking their movements with clumsy fingers. The rhythm of it, the threading, the tension, the release, reminded her of sewing with her mother long ago, before sickness took her, before silence settled into the house like fog. A breath caught in her throat. She blinked it away. By the third week, the children began to speak to her. They were the first. They didn't care where she came from. Only that she could carry two of them at once, or whistle through her fingers, or draw horses in the dirt with surprising skill. One girl asked if she'd always been so pale. Another boy demanded to know if white people ate rabbits raw. She laughed for the first time in weeks. "No," she said, smiling, "but I once knew a man who tried." Laughter, real and bright, erupted around the fire. Someone brought her a bowl of stew that night without being asked. She didn't know who, but she knew what it meant. It was the next morning, during water hauling, that the tall boy finally spoke to her. He was waiting near the river, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "You try hard," he said. Evelyn paused. "Is that a bad thing?" He shrugged. "Not bad, but strange. Most who come here want to teach, not to learn." "I have nothing to teach," she said. He tilted his head. "That may be true, or you're just hiding it." She looked him over. "And what do you think I'm hiding?" "A name." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I had one," she said finally, "but I'm not her anymore." He nodded slowly. "Good. Then the fire may still make something of you." That night, the council called her again. She stood before them, the fire casting shadows across her face, the smoke curling like old ghosts. "You have worked," said the elder with gray braids, "but work is not spirit, and spirit must be tested." She nodded. "I understand." Tala stood beside her, gaze steady. "She does not ask for comfort," the old woman said. "She does not cry. She does not complain. She listens." "She listens," echoed another. The elder turned to Evelyn. "There is a place," he said, "a ridge to the west where no one sleeps. You will go there tonight. You will not eat. You will not speak. You will wait until the sun rises twice. And if you return, the fire will speak your name." Evelyn's mouth went dry. She felt the children watching from behind the tents, the women pausing in their weaving, the warriors leaning on their spears. She swallowed hard and nodded once. "I will go." Before she left, Tahala pressed a bundle into her hands, a strip of jerky, a small piece of flint, and a feather wrapped in red cord. "Do not eat unless your soul leaves your body," she warned. "The spirit hears best on an empty stomach." Evelyn nodded, then turned and walked west into the dark. Not as a girl who ran, not as someone who was cast out, but as someone going to meet herself, whatever would be left when the sun came back. The stars were cold above her, not just distant, but sharp, like needles stitched into the sky. Evelyn sat cross-legged atop the ridge, a small ring of stones her only protection from the wind that never stopped moving. Below her, the world slept. But up here, sleep was forbidden. She had nothing but a blanket, the feather tied in red cord, and silence. For the first few hours, she listened to everything: the chirp of night insects, the distant cry of an owl, the low groan of the earth shifting beneath itself. By dawn, she had learned that loneliness has a sound. It creeps into your ears when there's no one to speak your name. Hunger came and went. The sun climbed, dipped, returned. Time was no longer measured by clocks or bells, but by shadows. By the way her stomach turned inside out. By how long she could go without speaking aloud. But her mind didn't stop speaking. It whispered of Glenbrook, of the man who raised his hand to her more than once, of the town that turned their backs, of the preacher who said she'd brought shame upon the church just by surviving. She'd tried to forget all of it, but now in the wind, memory screamed, and still she stayed. At some point on the second night, she began to hallucinate. She saw her mother sitting beside her, face soft and familiar, eyes full of the old kindness. The scent of rosewater clung to the vision. Evelyn reached for her, fingers trembling, but her hand passed through the figure like smoke. "Am I dying?" she whispered to the dark. The dark didn't answer, but a voice did, not from outside, from within. "You are not dying," it said. "You are becoming." The ridge held its breath, and so did she. When the sun rose again, pale and golden across the treetops, Evelyn was still there, still breathing, still waiting. She stood slowly, legs stiff and weak beneath her. Her face was drawn, her lips cracked, but her eyes, they burned with something new. Not anger, not fear, fire. She returned to camp just after midday. She did not speak. She did not need to. They saw it in her walk, in the way her shadow followed her like a second skin, in the way even the horses turned their heads as she passed. Tala was waiting. The old woman reached forward, gently touched the feather still tied at Evelyn's wrist. "You heard something," she said. Evelyn nodded. "I heard everything." The council was called that evening. The camp gathered, hushed and expectant. Evelyn stood in the center once more, though this time her spine was straight, her shoulders square. She no longer looked like a guest in someone else's world. She looked like someone who had chosen this soil to kneel on. The elder with gray braids rose. "You left here with no name," he said. "You return with fire in your eyes. The ridge speaks, but so must you. Tell us what the wind called you." Evelyn's voice was hoarse but steady. "I saw my mother," she said, "and the girl I was before. I buried them both, and what rose in their place," she paused, "was Ash Woman." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Tahala smiled faintly. The elder nodded. "From fire and grief, Ash. From ash, rebirth. You will be known by this name." He reached down, took a small pinch of ash from the ceremonial fire, and pressed it gently across her brow. "Ash Woman," he said, "daughter of no blood, but of spirit, sister to the wind. You may stay." That night, no one turned her away from the fire. No one looked through her. Children brought her stew. Women brought her a woven shawl. Even the tall boy, who had said so little, nodded once and said, "You found your name." She looked at him. "I didn't find it. I earned it." He smiled, a rare, fleeting thing. "You're learning." And later, when the flames crackled low and stories were told beneath the stars, Someone asked if she remembered the place she came from. Ash Woman stared into the coals. Yes, she said quietly. I remember, but it doesn't own me. Tala passed her a cup of warm tea, herbs swirling gently within. You are not a ghost anymore, the old woman said. Now you belong to fire, not to forgetting. Ash Woman drank, and for the first time in her life she didn't flinch at the warmth. She welcomed it. Ash Woman woke with the sun, not because she had to, but because now she wanted to. Each morning the camp stirred slowly, like the land stretching itself after a deep sleep. She had begun to rise before the first embers flared, helping Tahala rekindle the flames. Fire was her duty now, her gift, her burden, and she carried it without complaint. You still sleep like a settler, Tahala teased one morning, setting a clay pot atop the embers. Too still, too soft. Earth doesn't trust bodies that don't move. Ash Woman smiled faintly. Maybe I'm just trying not to snore. The old woman snorted. You think I sleep through your teeth grinding like a beaver? Please. But there was fondness in her words, the kind you only earned. She no longer wore her old dress. One of the younger women, Winona, had helped her stitch a tunic from softened hide and beads, each one chosen with care. It was plain by the tribe's standards, but to Ash Woman, it was the first thing she had ever worn that felt like her. The stitching is yours, Winona said. The pattern is simple, but it's honest. Ash Woman ran her fingers over the thread. So am I. The days turned longer, warmer. She helped tan hides, fetch water, and learned to braid cord from sinew. She sat in the shade beside mothers and elders, listening, always listening. One night around the central fire, an elder told a story of a buffalo hunt, how a young boy had fallen from his horse and stood between the herd and the edge of a cliff. Instead of running, he had sang like he was already with the ancestors, the elder said. And the herd turned. That boy's name was made in that moment. Ash Woman stared into the flames. She wondered what song she would sing when her moment came. It came sooner than expected. A rider galloped into camp one evening, dust on his back, urgency in his eyes. He dismounted fast, barely stopping to greet the elders. Settlers are moving closer, he said, with guns and wagons, cutting trees by the creek. Whispers swirled. The creek was sacred. It fed the roots of the old cottonwoods. Children played there. Ceremonies had been held beside its banks since before memory. Some of the men rose, already reaching for bows and rifles. The elder with gray braids raised a hand. We do not act on fear. We act on knowing. He turned his gaze to Ash Woman. You know their ways, their talk, their fear. She blinked. You want me to go to them? He nodded. See if they come with greed or ignorance. If it is the first, we prepare. If it is the second, perhaps words can hold back fire. Ash Woman's stomach nodded. She hadn't spoken to a settler since Glenbrook. I'm not one of them anymore. You were, the elder said calmly. That is enough. Go. Take Red Owl with you. Red Owl was the tall boy, now nearly a man. He met her at dawn, bow slung across his back, face unreadable. We ride light, he said. One day's travel. Speak only if they ask. She nodded. I remember. They rode without speaking. The land opened wide beneath their horses, the ridges and shadows like old stories carved in dirt. By midday, smoke appeared on the horizon. The smell of it, coal, pine, and something burnt, made Ash Woman's throat tighten. There was a camp of 6 wagons, white canvas tops, 2 men chopping at a tree near the creek, 1 woman tending a cook fire. A boy sat nearby, staring at the strangers who approached. Ash Woman dismounted first. The older of the 2 men, red-faced and heavy with sweat, stepped forward. You lost? He asked. She shook her head. I was sent. He blinked. You talk good for an... I'm not here to fight, she said plainly. But the trees you're cutting, this land has meaning. You're near sacred water. The man grunted. This ain't marked on no map. It's marked in memory, Red Owl added, his voice quiet but firm. The settler scowled. We're just trying to make a place for our families. Ash Woman looked at the boy by the fire, thin, barefoot, dirt-smudged. I understand, she said, but this creek isn't safe. The water turns bad when the earth is cut too deep. You'll sicken. Your livestock will suffer. The man hesitated. The woman at the fire stood slowly. You're one of them? She asked. You don't look like... Ash woman stepped closer. I am not who I was, she said, but I know both paths. I am trying to keep peace on both. The woman studied her. You got a name? Ash woman straightened. They call me Ash woman. The woman nodded. That's a strong name. They left with no blood drawn. No promises either, but no bullets. Sometimes that was enough. When they returned, Red Owl said nothing until they reached the edge of camp. Then quietly, you spoke like someone born with both tongues. Ash woman looked at him. Maybe fire burned away the old one, but what's left belongs here. He nodded once. I see that now. And so did the others. When she passed the fire that night, no one called her outsider. They called her sister. Summer thickened over the plains, heavy with the scent of wild sage and warm rain. Life in the camp moved with the rhythm of the earth, planting, hunting, harvesting, preparing. Ash woman moved with it. She wasn't just tolerated anymore. She was trusted. She braided the hair of the children. She helped sew new teepees for the season change. She learned the dances, not perfectly but with heart, and her laughter rose alongside theirs under the full moon. Still, the future whispered at the edges of her mind. This peace was not forever. Nothing ever was. The settlers were not far. And though the small group near the creek had moved on, others would come, with more wagons, more axes, more guns. And sometimes peace needed defending. It was late afternoon when the runners returned, breathless, to camp. Soldiers, one gasped. 2 days' ride, coming south, fast. No one panicked, but the council met immediately. Ash woman sat outside the elders' circle with the other women, listening carefully, weaving a basket with fingers that trembled only slightly. We cannot meet them with war, said the elder with gray braids, but we will not wait for chains around our wrists either. The young warriors, including Red Owl, volunteered to ride north, to find the other bands, warn them. Ash woman watched Red Owl stand, tall and certain, and felt a pang she hadn't expected. He caught her eye once, fleetingly, before turning away to join the others. That evening, Tala found her mending a torn blanket by the fire. Your spirit is restless, the old woman said without asking. Ash woman kept stitching. He's going to war. No, Tala said sharply. He's going to protect peace. War comes only if fools demand it. Ash woman swallowed hard. I don't know if I can lose anyone else. Tala sat heavily beside her, joints cracking like dry wood. Loss is not a thief waiting outside your door. It's a river. It carves you whether you want it or not. You cannot dam it. You can only decide what shape you will take after it passes. Ash woman blinked back the sting in her eyes. Sometimes I think you enjoy speaking in riddles. The old woman chuckled low in her chest. If the spirits gave me straight answers, I would. She squeezed Ash woman's hand, bony fingers surprisingly strong. You have fire, girl. Let it keep you warm, not burn you alive. Red Owl left before sunrise. Ash woman didn't say goodbye, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how. Instead, she gathered herbs with the women. She carried water from the creek. She sang to the children at night in a voice that no longer cracked from uncertainty, and she waited. Each sunset, she watched the horizon for dust trails. Each night, she kept a small fire burning just outside her tent, whispering old prayers and new ones she made up as she went. 5 days passed, then 6, then 7. On the 8th evening, when the cicadas shrieked louder than usual and the air smelled of coming rain, a scout returned, wounded. Ash woman rushed to the gathering circle where he was being tended. The soldiers crossed the river, the young man gasped. There was a skirmish. Red Owl, he coughed hard, blood flecking his lips, was left behind, captured. Ash woman felt the ground tilt beneath her. Captured, not killed, but in some ways worse. The council deliberated long into the night. We cannot risk everyone for one, said one of the elder warriors. He knew the risks. He is our blood, the elder with gray braids countered. and blood calls blood. Ash Woman rose before she could think better of it. She crossed into the firelight, heart hammering. I'll go. Silence fell like a dropped stone. You? Someone scoffed. She knows their ways, Tala said quietly. Their words. Ash Woman met the elder's gaze steadily. I can pass where your warriors cannot. They see a white woman, not a threat. The council murmured uneasy. Finally the elder nodded. You go at dawn. That night Ash Woman packed lightly. Dried meat, a knife hidden in her boot, the shawl Winona had woven for her. Tala pressed a pouch of herbs into her hand. For courage and for healing. Ash Woman tucked it close to her heart. The old woman touched her forehead, the way one might bless a child before a long journey. You walk into fire again, she said. But remember, ashes feed the earth. Ash Woman squeezed her hand in return. I'm not afraid of fire anymore. At first light, she mounted a borrowed pony and turned north, toward the river, toward danger, toward whatever fate awaited her. Not as a girl cast out, not as a ghost, but as Ash Woman, one who had already survived being burned to the ground, and learned that rebirth was written into her very bones. And this time, she wasn't running from the fire. She was riding straight into it. The river marked the boundary between the known and the dangerous. Ash Woman sat atop her pony on a rise, scanning the valley below. The soldiers had made camp near a bend in the river, their white tents like teeth biting into the land. Horses whickered in a makeshift corral. Smoke curled from cooking fires. Armed men moved in and out of sight, alert but unworried. No one expected danger from the trees. No one expected danger from someone like her. She tied her hair back, wiped the dust from her skirt, and straightened her shoulders. Then she rode down the slope, steady and slow, toward the enemy camp. The first soldier who saw her shouted, rifle half lifted before he realized what he was looking at. A woman, he called over his shoulder, and a white one. By the look of her. More heads turned, eyes narrowed, but no shots rang out. Ash Woman dismounted calmly, keeping her hands visible. I'm looking for someone, she said, her voice even. A man with brass buttons and an impatient frown stepped forward. The officer in charge, no doubt. And who might you be? Ash Woman met his gaze without flinching. Someone who knows you're holding a boy you have no right to. The officer snorted. We found an Indian scout spying on our lines. That's called espionage. He's not a scout. He's a messenger. Your quarrel isn't with him. Our orders don't make exceptions. Ash Woman took a slow breath. Then make one now, she said quietly. Before you start a war, you cannot finish. The officer laughed, a short, ugly sound. You threaten the United States Army, Missy. No, Ash Woman said. I warn you, there's a difference. She met him eye to eye, steady as stone. She wasn't a cowering girl in Glenbrook anymore. She wasn't anyone's shame. She was fire in human form, and she had learned how to burn without being consumed. The officer hesitated. Behind him, another man, older, with silver at his temples, stepped forward. Sir, he said lowly, we don't need another mess like last winter. One kid ain't worth it. The officer scowled, but doubt crept into his stance. Ash Woman pressed her advantage. Return him. Show you mean no harm, or lose more than you ever intended. The officer barked an order. Moments later, Red Owl was dragged out from a tent, hands tied but head unbowed. A bruise darkened his jaw. His eyes widened when he saw her. You, he rasped. Ash Woman gave a small smile. Me. The officer waved a dismissive hand. Take him and get out of here. Without waiting for a second invitation, Ash Woman rushed forward, cutting Red Owl's bonds with her hidden knife. His wrists were raw and bloody, but he managed a grim nod of thanks. Together they mounted her pony, awkward but determined, and rode hard for the trees before anyone could change their minds. Gunfire barked behind them, wild and useless. A warning, not an attack. Ash Woman didn't look back. They didn't slow until the river was far behind, and the campfires no more than smudges in the distance. Red Owl slid off the horse first, staggering. Ash Woman jumped down after him, steadying his arm. You're hurt, she said. He shrugged. They hit like cowards. Ash Woman smirked. You look like one too. He laughed, a ragged, grateful sound, and sank to the ground beneath a twisted oak. For a while, neither spoke. They simply breathed side by side, the forest shielding them. Then quietly, Red Owl said, "You shouldn't have come for me." Ash Woman looked at him sharply. "And leave you to rot in their chains?" He shook his head. "You risked everything." She reached out, touched his bruised face gently. "So did you, when you first taught me not to run." Their eyes held, and something unspoken, something fierce and whole, passed between them. Not promises, not dreams, just the solid, living truth. They belonged to the same fire now. When they returned to camp, they were met with cheers and tears. Even the sternest of warriors clapped Red Owl's back. The children ran circles around Ash Woman's pony, laughing. Tahla wept openly, cursing and blessing them in the same breath. The elder with gray braids placed a hand on Ash Woman's shoulder. "You have not just survived the fire," he said. "You have become it." That night, under the wide, star-smeared sky, the people gathered to honor them both. Ash Woman stood by the central fire, Red Owl beside her, and listened as her name was spoken. Not in whispers, not in pity, but in pride. Ash Woman. The girl who had been cast out had become a sister, a daughter, a warrior of spirit. And the fire she carried now wasn't just survival. It was life. It was love. It was a future. Ash Woman's journey reminds us all, sometimes the family you find is stronger than the one you were born into. What was your favorite moment from her transformation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next adventure under the wide, wild skies of the frontier.